The Curse of Creation by Lyra Moorcroft. Chapter 1, The Rootwalker's Oath. The forest sprawled across the ancient county of Norfolk, an emerald ocean stretching from the low hills of Old Broadfield to the mist-veiled shores of the wine-dark sea. They called it the Green Weald, a name that did little to encompass the vastness of its hidden depths, the ancientness of its roots, and the mystery that clung to every leaf, every shadow. Its canopy was a shroud of deep and heavy greens, from towering oaks as old as the bones of the earth to the young and spirited birches, their white bark gleaming like whispers of moonlight in the dimness below. Under the canopy, sunlight was a rare traveler, filtered and softened by layers of green, casting a perpetual twilight that lent the woodlands an eerie, unearthly beauty. In the northern reaches, where the trees thinned and the land sloped towards the coast, the forest relinquished its hold to a narrow strip of marshes and sandbanks. There, the wood gave way to wind and salt, where the whisper of the trees met the endless roar of the waves, the forest's last breath merging with the sea's eternal murmur. It was said that no man nor beast could cross the Weald from end to end and come out unchanged. Stories drifted like the mist through the villages bordering the wood, tales of wanderers who lost their way and returned older than they had left, or strangers who disappeared into the gloom, only to re-emerge with strange lights in their eyes and songs in their throats, songs in a language no mortal voice could rightly sing. There were many who lived within its borders, small villages nestled like quiet secrets in the shelter of the trees, where the folk went about their days with a deep-rooted respect and fear for the forest that encircled them. Hedgefolk and herbalists, shepherds and hunters, they shared their lives with the wildwood, weaving legends about the creatures said to dwell within. For in the Green Weald, beasts were more than beasts, and plants grew with a mind and will of their own. On a fog-bound morning, when the dawn was but a pale breath over the treetops, a lone figure stood on the edge of the wood. He was stout, his frame built solid as iron and broad across the chest, his beard braided and laced with fragments of bone and wood. His name was Grimney, a wanderer in his own right, though he was as familiar to the forest as any son born of its soil. He had the look of the wood about him, sharp-eyed, thick-browed, and stern, with arms corded in muscle and hands that bore the scars of 1,000 hunts and battles. His boots were worn, his axe was heavy, and his gaze was steady, bearing the weight of someone who understood the language of leaves and shadows. Yet, on this day, even Grimney felt a stirring in the air, as though something ancient had woken in the depths of the Green Weald. He felt it beneath his feet, a quiver in the ground, a murmur that rose from the roots to the hilt of his axe. And when he looked into the depths of the forest, he felt it look back. He had not felt this pull in years, not since he was a young lad and the forest had first called him to walk its wild paths. But here it was again, a soft, urgent whisper in the breeze, beckoning him into its shadows. With a low grunt, Grimney took his first step into the wood. His feet made no sound on the thick carpet of fallen leaves, and he moved with a surprising quiet for one of his size, his cloak merging with the dappled green and brown of the forest. He knew these paths as well as any in Norfolk, yet today, they seemed unfamiliar, altered by that unseen hand which had stirred in the heart of the Weald. He walked for miles, passing under branches that arched like cathedral vaults above his head, through groves where light filtered down in strange and beautiful patterns. Here and there, he spotted traces of life, the sharp prints of a deer, the delicate nest of a nightingale tucked into a low-hanging bough. But there were signs, too, that few others would notice. The twisted vine curling around an oak as though it clung for dear life, a sudden ring of mushrooms where there had been none the day before. In any other wood, these would be common sights, but here they spoke of movement, of change, of life beneath the surface that was older than mankind. As he ventured deeper, the light dimmed, and the air grew thick with the scent of moss and damp earth. He paused by an ancient yew tree, its bark gnarled and scarred, branches drooping like weary limbs. The yew had always been there, a sentinel at the gateway of the deep wood, a boundary few dared to cross. Beyond the yew lay the oldest part of the Green Weald, a place of shadows and secrets where the forest's magic ran wild and untamed. It was the place the village folk called the Heartwood, though none alive knew what lay at its core. But Grimney had seen it once, on a day long ago, when he was barely more than a child with the heart of a bear and the caution of a wolf. He had stumbled through the trees, his steps light as a hare's, until he had found himself at the edge of a great clearing, where an ancient tree older than any other in the wood stood alone, its branches spreading wide and low like the arms of a giant. He had felt something then, a presence vast and watchful, a sense of life older than words. It had frightened him, yet it had also filled him with a sense of awe, as though he had glimpsed something sacred. Now, standing before the yew once more, Grimney felt that same thrill, that same whisper in his blood. He reached out and placed a hand against the yew's rough bark, murmuring a quiet greeting, a plea for passage. The forest, he knew, was a realm of rules and rights, and to walk its paths without respect was to invite ruin. The yew's bark was cold, but under his hand, it seemed to warm, as though in acknowledgement. And then, the forest shifted. The quiet grew deeper, the light dimmer, and the very air seemed to close around him, thick as a shroud. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, crossing into the heartwood. The trees here were ancient beyond reckoning, their trunks broad and twisted, their branches heavy with age. No birds sang here, and the only sound was the soft rustle of leaves underfoot, a sound like whispers, as though the forest itself were speaking in voices too soft to hear. He walked on, feeling the weight of the wood around him, its age and its power pressing in on him from all sides. And at last, he reached the clearing. There, at the heart of the heartwood, stood the great tree. Its bark was pale and smooth, its branches spreading wide and low, and its roots coiling like the veins of the earth itself. It was said that this tree was the source of the forest's magic, that it was the heart of the Green Weald, the source from which all its life flowed. Grimney stepped forward, his heart pounding, his breath catching in his throat. He had come this far, yet now he felt a strange reluctance, a sense of awe that made him hesitate. But then, the tree stirred, its branches swaying as though in a breeze that touched nothing else. And in that moment, he felt it, a pulse, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. It filled him with a warmth, a sense of connection so deep that he felt as though he were part of the tree, part of the forest, part of the very land itself. And as he stood there, the tree's roots seemed to stir, shifting in the earth, reaching out to him like hands. And he knew, in that moment, that he was not alone. The forest was alive, and it was watching.